This is an air source heat pump. It's a 13 kilowatt Grant air source heat pump. I can tell you everything that you need to know. It's renewable energy, so you're going to lower your carbon footprint, and that's going to obviously be better for the environment. So if you're green-minded and you're looking for future heating technologies, this is going to be the best option for you. There's the air source, there's also ground source as well. Obviously, this is generating its heat from the ambient air. So the way that this works would be, it's going to drag. It's got two fans at the front. This is a twin fan unit, so you can get single fan units, which would be this high. But it's going to drag through the fan, through the back of the evaporator here, pull through and generate from the ambient air temperature. It's going to upcycle that energy that's in the air to a heat, which is then going to provide comfortable room temperatures if it's installed correctly, which is where heat pumps can get a bad name, because if they're not installed correctly, that's when you can have high running costs. That's when you have heat pumps that don't last as long as they should do. A big, quite important thing about heat pumps is the design of them, making sure that's bang on to begin with, because they don't work in the same way a gas boiler does. They work at a low temperature. When I say low temperature, so the output of the unit, really, if you want really maximum efficiency, it needs to be working at around 35 degrees or 40 degrees. So that's how hot a radiator would physically get to touch. Or if you had an underfloor system, you know, you get underfloor quite common, be 35 degrees under there as well. That's where you're going to get the maximum efficiency out of the unit. If you try and get higher temperatures out of this, let's say you want the same temperatures that a gas boiler would give you, around 70, 80 degrees, then that's good. The efficiency of that's going to drop off a cliff, and you're going to be paying a lot on your electric bills. Whether these are a viable alternative for you or not is kind of working out, and it's at the design phase to figure out your annual running costs. So if you're on a tariff, you'll know that your electric will be more expensive than your gas. So you need to obviously design these in a way where the efficiency of the unit is at least going to be at even par with a fossil fuel, but it's a renewable source. So it's not just about cost savings, it's about having something which is green. And over a period of time, if you wanted to add solar, if you wanted to improve the insulation of your building, of where you live, you know, you can save money there in the longer term, but it is kind of a long-term investment. In a lot of cases that we go to, it's not overly practical for people to invest large amounts of money into an air source heat pump if they've got a gas boiler on the wall, because they could replace a gas boiler from as little as 1,600 quid. You can replace a gas boiler for this. That's not going to cover the cost of the unit. You know, you're looking at an investment of between 10 to 15,000 pounds, depending on what's required. You're not going to be able to just swap an air source heat pump for a gas boiler. We're going to have to design the system correctly and appropriately to ensure that the emitters, which are your radiators, your underfloor, are going to be suitable to work at a lower temperature, at a lower output, which is, again, like I said earlier, that's where you get your efficiency out of this. So this system is a 13 kilowatt Grant. I've designed the flow temperature, so that's like the maximum flow temperature, which I will get around my radiators inside this property to be 40 degrees. Okay, the boiler that we took out of here was operating around 75 degrees. Okay, so it's, you know, near enough 50% lower than it was previously, which meant we've changed every single radiator in this house, and we've upgraded pipe work for this to flow nicely and to get the efficiency. So this will give me, based on my design, around 500% efficiency, and it's called a SCOP, your seasonal coefficient of performance. Whereas on a gas boiler, you're looking at around 90 to 95% efficiency. So for every 1 kilowatt of gas, you're getting obviously 0.95 kilowatts out of it, and that's at best case. The risk is, like I've already referred to, is not designing these correctly and not putting them in and not doing the right design calcs. Off the back of here, we've got our pipe work, our primary pipe work, that needs to be able to carry water around the system faster than a gas boiler. And that's called something called DT. So it's your differential between what goes out and what comes back on your pipe work. DT could also be described of the DT, the difference between your outdoor temperature, your internal temperature. So that's your difference. A gas boiler would operate, if it's a condensing appliance, with a DT of around 20, which is if the water's going out at 70 degrees, it's coming back at 50 degrees. So there's a 20 degree difference there. Now on this heat pump, we design it to a DT of 5 degrees, which is quite a difference, isn't it? So if it's going out, and it will be going out on this system at 40 degrees maximum, the return temperature of the water coming back to the heat pump is around 35 degrees. So that means that the water flowing around my system here is moving a lot quicker, okay? This is why your pipework's important, because if your pipework's tight and it's undersized, this is going to be turning on and off like the clappers. It's not going to stay on and run low and slow, which is what we need it to do, again, to get the efficiencies out of it. We want this to be lasting 15, 20 years. We don't want to be putting it on and it be turning on and off, damaging the compressor. It's a sizable investment that needs to be done and installed correctly. Another good thing about heat pumps as well, which is available on gas boilers, is the controls that you set it up to, and it's got weather compensation built actually into this unit. So I've already referenced that the flow temperature of this system, the maximum temperature is 40 degrees. This heat pump will give me that 40 degrees around my radiators if it's -3 out, and that's again back to your design. If it's a more mild temperature, mild day, I've got weather compensation to account for it being more mild externally, which will then drop that flow temperature from 40 on this system all the way down to 30 degrees. So it will operate at a much lower temperature, again getting you more efficiency when it is more mild because it's working more intelligently. It's picking up on the air temperature here on a day like today when it's around 13, 14 degrees. It doesn't need to give the radiators 40 degrees worth of heat. It can actually drop that down and again improve efficiency further. Sounds quite a big thing with these. It's quite a common thing really. Oh, you know, they're really, really noisy. So on a survey, you would measure how far it is from the nearest habitable room, like a neighbour, and then there's actually there's a proper process, and you like take into account whether it can be sited in a location or not, depending on obviously where you propose to put it to where your neighbour is and a habitable room is. There's a specific survey that we do just for that alone. It's kind of a common concern with people, but I don't feel that they're actually half as loud as people try to insinuate they are when they're installed correctly. And we have to install it to MCS standards, which is what we're accredited as a business to install renewable technologies. We're also on some rubber feet here as well. So obviously these little elements are just to try and take some of the sound out of the unit. If you just had it stood on concrete, that is going to make a bit of sound. It's also on flexible connections at the back, again to give it that little bit of movement there, because when it is on, it's obviously a moving part. It does generate some sound, but we need to mitigate that as best as possible by putting it in the right place, and also obviously doing it to manufacturer instructions, putting on a rubber feet, flexible hoses, and again, installing it correctly. In regards to the heat pump, we can't just plonk this in and expect it to run and replace a gas boiler or something else. We usually have to make upgrades to the system. That's quite common. Radiator upgrades, pipework upgrades, new hot water cylinder.